Hi, I'm Roy Collin, the host of the podcast. You can find everything about me by scanning the QR code there or going to roycollin.com, and you'll find my six podcasts: the Podfather, helping people become podcasters; the Awakening, exposing fraud and corruption but with solutions; the Crypto, all things blockchain technology; meditation podcast; speaking podcast; and the Learn Polish podcast. You can also help the show by actually making a donation, visiting the store, or helping my sponsors. I hope you enjoyed this week's show. Welcome to the Awakening Podcast. You find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org. I've got my good friend Peter Wilson back, and what I would suggest is sometimes I'd actually name the episodes he's been on, but because we're doing this monthly and providing really valuable information, I suggest whether you're on BitChute or whatever channel that you're on, or even my website, just type his name, and all the episodes will come up, and you get the information. What we talk about is a bit of martial arts because of his fighting history, but mainly about common law, kind of sovereignty, and things like that, and also on health. So you're going to learn, as always, a lot on it. So, Peter, welcome back.
Yeah, great to be back again. Always enjoy myself coming on.
So, I like to have a little chit chat at the start. I'm curious, with your kind of martial arts background, with the fiasco with Tyson and Jake Paul. I wasn't planning on watching it. I woke up kind of like 15 minutes to 2 my time, and I thought there was going to be the fight then. I didn't realize there was going to be four fights, and ended up watching the whole lot. I was impressed with the women's fights. That was a proper fight, but it was such a farce. And I'm just curious, like they've obviously made millions, they've done a good marketing thing, but it was pathetic to see. And you can just see the outrage, for all the people. I mean, it was on Netflix, so technically they weren't paying. But if you'd paid a couple of thousand to be inside in that arena, because there was something like 72,000, you'd be disgusted. But has that affected the boxing industry the way that they've done that?
Well, it's hard to say. It's because if anybody knows, just even like that Jake Paul, then they should just be following a joke because he is a joke. Anybody right that can just say, "Oh well, I've got a YouTube channel and I've got a lot of followers, so I think I'll start being a boxer." Then no, you're not, right? And I don't care even if you start training. Then what you should do is you should go into like all the amateur bouts, or you should even just go into unlicensed boxing, right? And you should work your way up. Why should some idiot like that clown get a chance to fight absolutely anybody? Now, let's go into that particular one. Like with Mike Tyson, I didn't watch it. I didn't watch any preparations or interviews or nothing, because it's pathetic. I mean, the guy, like I've watched Mike Tyson when he was in his prime, and like, you know what I mean, think, well, what you just would never want to cross him, would you?
No.
Anybody would be crazy. But he's a granddad, he's like he's not meant to be fighting. He did have actual a fractured spine at one point, so he's had a lot of surgery to actually build him up to oh, well, he's definitely not full health. And I would do something like go on and do like sparring in a session where you could have fun and like work together and stuff like that. But I wouldn't try and put it on as an exhibition and a demonstration and pretend it was a fight. Like, I mean, Jake Paul, like you have to take your hat off to them for like making money. Yeah, okay, then like you're obviously a genius at that, but you've got absolutely nothing to do with boxing or MMA because I know he's mouthing off now about Conor McGregor, and it's a circus. It really is. I mean, if you ever want to get a real cut on boxing, then listen to like Carl Froch. Now he's got his own, well, he speaks on, I don't know if it's like big podcast, but he speaks the truth, and he's calling out like the whole thing as a farce, and it's where you're damaging a sport, you're damaging a real like professional sport by putting on this circus, which is the same with he was saying exactly the same for Tyson Fury with his dad, and that like that complete debacle, that they had that fight, and the dad was headbutting people from the opposite camp, and doing all these crazy things in the press conferences. Yeah, but it's all influential. Now, I have run many, many shows right back from the early 90s all the way through, even in like all over the UK, in Spain. We were running massive kickboxing and MMA shows. Now, when we came back from Spain, and we were just talking about this before we came on air, when we were wanting to help get the second gym open, which is for my son. So we wanted to run some shows which will create revenue to actually help, let's go and like get in with all of the equipment because it's expensive to actually open up a martial arts gym, a business. So, and we were having these guys come on, and I would be the referee. And, I'll admit completely, I am extremely strict. The way that I run it would be, well, you're either a sportsman or you're not. And, you would be acting as a sportsman and a gentleman, right? When you're in there, or for the ladies, right? As a sportswoman and being like a stand-up lady, or you will be out of there. Simple as that. And I won't put up with any nonsense or showboating or trying to show off and humiliate an opponent, or, bad mouthing of stuff. And some of the scenes that you can see, sometimes we had teenagers coming on, their attitude is disgusting. Where's that come from? When you go into a gym, it's supposed to be respect. You're going to bow to go in. We used to say a student creed, which was how we expect everybody to behave. Then they would train, then they would bow with respect to leave. And it's the same really in boxing. It is the same kind of discipline and respect and honor. So to me, to humiliate it, the sporting aspect and the honorable side, I mean, I've seen martial arts, like mixed martial arts, MMA people like fighting, and there's like, you can see the pain that they've went through and that they're in, and the fight that they've done, and there's blood everywhere and everything. And then when they finish, and it's like complete like respect and honor, and and that's the way it should be. And yeah, I know that there can be like niggles even in the professional side. I'm not saying that there won't ever be, and everyone's going to be best friends, but show honor and respect at the end, and what they're doing by acting like that in front of impressionable teenagers. I mean, we had teenagers come in and putting their heads like on each other like that, and all they're doing is away. And I'm like, hey, what do you think you're doing? There's no TV cameras here. Don't act like a fool. Get out of my gym.
It's
You
sad
know?
actually, and your man is like doing the cutthroat thing and everything. It's like it's pathetic that they allow that. I know it's all a show, and it leads to more numbers and pretend they hate each other, and they're sitting down having a drink, prior to the match and after the match. It's all a game. But the problem is, unfortunately, as you say, kids are watching this and they think that's normal, that you behave like
Yeah.
an idiot.
Yeah, it's these are impressionable young teenagers, and not everyone as a coach is as strict as I have been. So a lot of people will allow that kind of behavior, or some people are like that themselves anyway. Not everybody's an honorable guy. So I've known plenty of like really bad, well, like coming from the underworld, and like gangsters and that are running gyms as well, and it is what it is. So they don't care if like certain people come in and act in certain ways. So if the teenagers are seeing this, then it's like, well, that must be how we're supposed to be then. And if I act like that, I might actually be famous and make money, you know? So, and unfortunately, the whole system, this like cabalic system, is just all about control, using this fiat currency for pretend money, and controlling everyone through money supply and debt. So they see that, and then away they go with it, and then it influences their behavior on a grander scale as well. So yeah, I
And
don't
like
agree with any of it.
you've been a referee, you were saying. Like I mean you didn't watch the match, but I did not just see any of the scenes. But like I was watching the ladies' match, and like they said it was kind of intentional, but I don't think the first headbutt was. But one had the Puerto Rico, I think she was from. She had a gash that was like half an inch by an inch wide, and the blood I would have stopped the fight immediately. And like they had the so-called doctor come in, and he's like, "Yeah, it's grand." I mean, that could cause serious injuries. Like, how can you allow that to go on? I mean, with a gash like that, you wouldn't allow it to go on, would you? Or is
Well,
that, am I wrong?
And honestly, now, years ago, they would have stopped it, right? I've got like a big scar down the side of my head here, and it was like it was accidental, I know for a fact, because it wouldn't slide down your head on purpose, but it split me across here, and it was like, what it was in the middle of a fight, right? It was a European Championship, and it was in Newcastle. And this guy come over from France, and I had caught him lovely, straight like 2-1-2 cross. I hit him straight on the nose, and then I had ducked underneath. But as I had ducked underneath because I wanted to do an uppercut, he had ducked and slid down the side of me, so a split. And then I was just like, as I was like trying to come away, I could see his chest was like all covered in blood. And my thought was, oh, I must have caught his nose then. I've popped his nose. So as I'm pulling back and I'm seeing blood squirting towards it, I'm looking,
Oh,
going,
jeez.
that doesn't look right. That doesn't look good. And I'm standing for a second, I'm thinking, oh, no, no, no. And then like we got pulled apart. The referee covered that up. And they stopped that because they didn't want that amount of blood being spilled. Obviously, if you're doing any kind of physical exercise, then your blood's pumping harder. So if anything cuts, it's going to look worse, you know. But it was here. Now, today, if it was cut here and it was running down there and it wasn't going in the eyes, they won't stop it, right? If it's above the eyes and it's going in and
Yeah,
stopping you seeing,
yeah, it
right,
was.
then they see it. They don't see it as a worry about an injury. They see it as unfair because you can't see properly. Same thing, if your eye closes and it can't see, so no, you can't go on because it's not a competition anymore. So that's really why they do it. So if it's cutting up here and it's not literally blinding them, they'll allow it now. That that it's a lot more open, and that comes from the MMA side. Whereas you'll see a lot worse injuries in MMA. Initially, there was no gloves. Now there's the tiniest gloves, and they're not there to protect your face. It's there to protect your hand.
Mm.
you know, so they're only literally 4 ounces. The whole thing, 4 ounces, is there's virtually nothing on. It's a bare knuckle with a little
Sure, I think
support
Conor
usually.
McGregor's after forming some club doing bare knuckle fighting as well. And just with your own one, when you said you got the hit, what happens when they stop a fight like that? Is it that they just kind of cancel it, or is it that somebody who gets the win when
Well,
it's a
this was
case
a
like an
big
accident? Like?
Yeah, I mean, this was a big argument that I had because, I had won every round. And this was like I think it was can't remember exactly, it was a while ago. It was like the fourth or fifth round, right? So, on the rule book, they should have went, well, if it's gone past a certain amount of rounds, I can't remember exact the rules now, but then they'll go to the scorecard. And I had won every single round, because I found the cards after, like because it was my event actually. I had organized the entire event. So I got all the paperwork at the end. And but obviously because it was a professional organization, we had people from different parts of the world that come in to referee it, to be the overseer, if you like, the representative from the organization. Cost a lot of money, but even back then it was like 2000, yeah, the year 2000, and it was still thousands and thousands of pounds back then to have this official sanctioning of an event. Um, but on this occasion, it just went, no, it's a draw, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that was it. And the thing is, as well, because it was my event, we'd organized this big party and everything like that after the event, and all the fighters were going back, and it was like, food on and everything like that. And I was in the hospital. I didn't see any of it. And it's like, and when I went in, it was like, it was a weekend. So I went into the accident and emergency in Newcastle, and they just treated you exactly the same as everybody in there. And it's like, oh, you've been having some drunken fight down, big market in Newcastle, and you got a big cut in your head. You're just waiting at the back of the queue. I was in there nearly all night. And then when they went in, the guy, he put 2 stitches in, just two. It was about like, it must have been about 3 inches long, you know. And the next day they just popped out. I just, oh, let's leave it. Can't be bothered, you know. And so it's quite a nasty scar. I can't really see much of it now. But yeah, it's just
So,
had
so
a
speaking
history.
speaking of events, you just had one, and I know you're going to have another one in December, but we might talk about the one that you've just had because it was like about trust, asset protection, and everything. That was on the 2nd of November. So you might just what exactly you were doing, and was there anything that you learned, or did you bring people in as well, or was it just yourself that?
No, no, that one I just presented myself. I did two, and both in the northeast. One in Durham, and the other one in Gateshead, right on the River Tyne. Um, so that was in a health resort, like a health retreat, where they have like the hyperbaric chambers and the salt room. If you haven't done that, sitting in the salt and pump like the Celtic salt into the room, and all the salts on the floor, and it's really good for you breathing in. So it was in there, and little presentation room above it, so that was really good. But I was just presenting the actual theme of like trusts and equity, and how you can use it to protect your own assets from third party assessments, such as councils, and like care home fees or inheritance tax or anything like that. So if you create these trusts, the same as all the wealthy do, and how to actually use them, then you can avoid things. All these farmers could avoid a lot of
Yeah,
this hassle
there's a
that
lot.
they're
Like
going
I
through.
suppose just for because I mean I have a massive UK audience, but for those in the US and other countries, you might just let them know what has happened with the because I mean they brought in a bill basically for inheritance tax that's going to affect the farmers that previously they didn't have to pay. So you might just kind of give them a synopsis of what exactly the bill
Yeah,
they're trying to
well,
pass.
I mean, like, I'm not on any electoral roll, so I don't do any registering for vote. I don't vote or anything like that. So I don't really pay any attention to it. But obviously, because of the information that I pass out, I do want to know what's going on. So I keep an eye on certain events. And when they were bringing this up about the inheritance tax, I was like, well, I need to know this part for the asset protection and the trust. So they specifically, what they're doing is, and this is a WEF agenda, right? This is like Klaus Schwabby Bobby's like whole thing. They're trying to take all the farmers out of it. So we've had a few like presentations from farmers. They're getting paid a lot of money to make sure they don't grow food.
Yeah, I heard a lot that they're not to grow wheat, but grow fucking flowers. And it's like
Well,
they're
it's
even, but
it's
they're getting paid. But you see, the problem is they're accepting that because it's like obviously they need to feed their family as well. But eventually they'll go, yeah, we don't need you no more, and they'll turn off that tap, and then they're in trouble.
Yeah, exactly that. So, I mean, you can see what they're doing is they're building up to be there's going to be a food shortage. So, I mean, they're actually encouraged and told, well, you can't grow any food in that field. It can only be wildflowers. And a few of the farmers are saying, but it's not even the proper flowers that should be in that area or in England. And the trees themselves are no good for the soil. You shouldn't have that type of tree in that soil in that area. So I mean, obviously, if you know a lot more about like nature and farming or
Crop
agriculture,
rotation and everything. Yeah,
anything like that, then you're going to know a lot more than we do. So you've got to take it at the word value that they're correct. So I mean, I've always said it. Well, why we're growing all these like huge big piles of trees everywhere instead of fruit trees? Why isn't it you got massive big like trees, like have it all fruit trees, and then people can go and feed themselves for
they cut
free.
them
Well,
all
that's
down,
why.
all the foraging. They cut it all down. They stopped it because they don't want people to be able to survive without them.
Exactly. So anyway, but like going back to what they've done is there was a cap on the inheritance tax for farmers to ensure families stayed in farming and produced the food. So why now would they all of a sudden want rid of the families that have been in there for generations? Because what they want is all the corporations to own the land. Well, we know how much, like Kill Gates is actually going and getting all of the farmland in the US, etc. They're doing the same in England, trying to control the agricultural land, so then they can decide if or when they may or may not grow food for it. So they'll decide that they're going to control all of the food. I mean, they're even coming up with ridiculous things like saying, well, you can't grow your own food in your own garden because that's bad for the climate. I mean, it's the insanity is through the roof. But yeah, so that's what they've done. They've took away the inheritance tax thresholds, so dropped it right down. So literally, they won't have any money to pay the inheritance tax without selling the farm So they're going to lose it no matter what. It's lost. That's
And just for
basically it.
those that wouldn't know and find that difficult, it's like a lot of farmers, they're not making massive money, but their land would be worth a lot more. And they have to pay like 20% on the value of it is, and they wouldn't have that cash. So then they're, cash rich, like asset rich, cash poor, and they basically have to sell it. And I mean, I totally against inheritance tax anyway. So basically, like say I'm your son, you've went away, you've worked hard, you've paid your tax, and then you want to just give me your assets and you can't, that has to be taxed again. Like
Yeah,
how
yeah.
whoever agreed to that? Like
Well, whoever agreed to pay tax in the first place, anyway.
exactly.
That's the whole thing. All of tax. This is the craziest thing, though. But people think, oh, well, I'll pay my fair share. It's not your fair share, right? That's got nothing to do with it. And none of what you pay goes to run a country or build a school or help with a hospital or make the roads. That's BS. That's bullshit. That's terrible, right? Well, all of your tax goes direct to the central banking system, the cabal, the Rothschilds banking cartel, that actually are private companies for profit that lend money to governments at interest. Governments aren't allowed to print their own money, you see? So the actual banking cartels print the money, the governments go and then borrow the money from the banking cartels at interest, and all of that tax goes to actually pay the interest on the loans. That's why they call it the deficit. Right, they say, oh, there's a deficit in a country. But what does that mean if a country can print its own money? How could you have a deficit? It doesn't make sense. Well, because they're lying to you. And all they do is like in the UK, they actually have to have a vote every year to actually put tax again, to allow them to charge income tax, because it was put in as a temporary measure in the Napoleonic Wars. And it has been a temporary measure ever since, but they just renew it every year so they can keep charging income tax on all these poor people.
And most
Um,
people don't know. They don't own the banks. They think like Bank of Ireland, the Central Bank of Ireland is owned by Ireland. And it's not.
no.
I checked most of the countries, it's all Rothschild. They own everything. And people think our country owns that. Like, how in the name of Jesus did that actually ever happen? It's like, what?
Mhm.
Like straight away, it's a whole, we're basically slaves to society. And when you realize that everything we do, like the cost of, say, even petrol, you're paying like, I don't know, about £1.50 in the UK now or something like that. It's like, or whatever, €1.50 in different countries. And it's like, that's not the price. Like that's, oh, that this is from the land. The land is the people's. So why
Yeah.
isn't it not just the cost of actually producing it and delivering it? And then that's it. And we get it at that. And it's not.
But this is the whole scam of everything. Everybody thinks that, so like, will you pay your tax? Oh, you're paying your fair share, right? Well, why is it all the rich and wealthy don't pay anything then? Right? It's only the ones that can hardly afford it that have to pay it. But here's a great example. So, right, where we live, I live like, I'm lucky. I live really near the beach, and it's like it's just a small village. But we've been invaded by all of these it's like it's called Open Reach is what it's called. This company, and it's a subcontracted company to British Telecom. And what they're doing is they're laying all of these fiber optic cables to make internet faster or something like that, right? So the they come up and they just, nobody told anyone. They just dug up all the road. We're like, hang on, I can't get out my bloody house. What have you done? So we're chatting to the guys, and he went, oh, this is like, we're doing this whole northeast, right? It's actually being paid for by subsidy from the government, right? So just bear that in mind, and then we'll take it back to the taxation thing. So there's this company, it's called OpenReach. It's dug up all the roads there. So, I mean, there was about 20 vans everywhere, like digging it up in this whole village. Then they're moving on to the next bit, then the next bit. They're laying fiber optic cables all the way over the whole of the northeast, and obviously it's all over England. It's already paid for. So what they said was, yeah, it's just a subcontracted subsidy from the government. So all of this is already paid for by the government. Okay. So if they were telling the truth, which we know they're not, right, and that the government had paid for it, then they could only really have paid for it because you paid tax. You agree?
Yeah.
Right. So you've paid the tax. to the government. The government are now giving it to a company to lay all of this fiber optics, right? So then you go and say, well, can I use that fiber optics, right? Because I want a better internet. Oh, yeah, that'll cost you 100 quid a month. Hang on, I've already paid for that. I paid my tax. They dug this up because the guy told me all this OpenReach dug up there, laid the foundation, laid the cables, put it all through. All the wires are already there that we paid for because it's our tax. And now you want me to pay it again? There you go. That's a fact. And when the guy, and he's chatting happily, the guy, well, it's great. Government's paid for all of this. And if you want it connected to your home for the internet, you just have to contact your own supplier. Then they'll alter the charge. And then you can get access to this fiber optic. It's like mega fast air broadband, you know? So it's like, it's just the whole thing. It's like absolutely insanity. And I was talking to a guy, funnily enough, right? Because I mean, I've got a lot of like family from Ireland, right? So, but like, so I've got a lot of connection to Ireland. I'm quite sort of like close, you know, on sort of like Irish sort of like sovereignty, shall we say it? I'm careful how I put this, right? But these guys, funny enough, I was talking to was Welsh, and he was talking about like the deficit in the country, and how they're always saying like, you know, this like Stormageddon. Now he's like, oh, we've discovered a 22 billion black hole in the economy, right? So we have to charge everyone gazillions more tax, right? So and like, you know, although we're going to give like 40 odd billion to Ukraine, right? The pensioners in this country now, especially since it started snowing, you're not getting any money to help pay for your winter fuel allowance, right? Which will save the country like, you know, what is it, a billion or something like that. But we're going to give Ukraine 20 billion, but we've got a 20 billion black hole. Well, I'm going to get my abacus out and I'm going to start adding up them beads. And I'm pretty sure even an abacus can tell you that you're talking a load of bullshit, right? There's 20 billion over this side, then 20 billion. Well, where's it? Hang on. Well, where's it all add up to then? It's all just nonsense. They're pulling these figures out of the air. They just, anyone can do that, you know? But he was talking, he said, I'm just going to match what they did to Wales to what they did to India. Right, he says India was obviously a much bigger place. The English, and it is the English, it's always the English. They call themselves British, but you know, it's the English that do it, right? They went and they destroyed Wales. Anyone that tried to be the Welsh princes, I can't even pronounce the names. I've tried, right? They killed them. They hung, drawn, and quartered them, and took all the land. And then they stripped all of the assets out of Wales, right? And they took it to England. Well, you know, like obviously we're not there. It was a long time ago, but you know, I bet you our ancestors didn't get any of that. Although I wouldn't have been there anyway. But then they did the same to Scotland, and they went and they took all of the Scottish. They still are taking all of the Scottish reserves and all of the Scottish assets away from there. Asset stripping the country, and it all goes to England. Well, they did exactly the same in India, and they went and they were always saying, because it was in the British Empire, oh well, we have to look after India because India are running on a deficit. They don't pay what we actually bring into the country. We give them a lot of money. They weren't telling you about the billions upon billions upon billions that they were stripping out of the country, right? And then they tell you it's all, well, there's a deficit because we're actually having to, they don't pay us as much tax as we give them to help run their country. We shouldn't have went there in the first place then, should you, you twat, right? But like, you know, and that's what they do. And they just lie and make up these ridiculous figures. And this is all, it's like, again, you've got to be careful with the words or you'll end up getting like, you know, kicked off with everything. But it's run by that tiny little group of people, right, that also control the central banks, which is not, you know, goes to England. It goes into that little bit in the middle called the City of London, right? That's where it all goes, which isn't even part of England itself either. It's a complete separate entity.
Different place as well.
Yeah, you know, so it just, the whole thing is a farce and it's a whole scam. And like George Carlin used to say, it's just one great big club and we are not in it, you know, and that's never a truer word has been said.
I mean, even if we look at like Churchill, I hear loads of things, all the, you know, everybody repeating the phrases he's done. And he was worse than Hitler, like the things he'd done. Like they burnt down Cork City in 1920. And it was my great grandfather. They were chased. They tried to kill him a few times. I'm reading a book at the moment about it, and I'm after getting documentation on it. But he was seen walking through after they burnt the city centre down to the ground, walking through, smiling, smoking a cigar. It's like, and like when you hear people then kind of praising him how good he was and everything, but when you actually take off the layers, most of these people, I mean, you see them all sitting together like Stalin and everything. I mean, how many millions did he kill? And they're all, at the time, like, oh, these people are great. Like, and we have to be careful who you actually admire in life.
Yeah.
Take off a few layers and realize what the true story is.
Churchill was a fat, cowardly scumbag. He was no hero to anybody. He knew all the time about, like, I mean, they were so linked, closely linked to Germany during the war anyway, right? But he knew all the time when they were going to bomb London. He was never there. He was at his home in Oxford. He made sure he was. And the only time that he actually appeared in London and he stood on the roof of 10 Downing Street there and, like, smoking his cigar, like, and saying, I'm doing it with you, is because he knew they'd been diverted and they were going to bomb somewhere else, right? I think they were going to bomb Ireland actually, but they weren't going to bomb London that night. So he knew it. So he stayed there. They knew everything that was going on. He was no hero whatsoever. And everyone said, "Oh yeah, he won the war." I didn't see him pick up a fucking gun, did you? Right? Like, he couldn't have got it over his belly. He sent troops and tanks against the people of Glasgow City in Scotland when they were protesting after the First World War, when they were actually taking their jobs off them. They were just, everything. This is what people don't realize, the poverty that they put the country into. Again, another bankers' war, completely fake war, didn't need to do it, but it was good so they could kill millions of people and get more money, right, for all of the rich and powerful and everything like that. But then when everyone was starving and they were all losing their jobs and they were going to put the strike and protesting in Glasgow, right, Churchill sent tanks in against the people. And what he did is he made sure that he didn't let any of them be the Glaswegian soldiers, because he knew there might be a bit, well, that's, I know these people, it's my family. So he was putting in different actual soldiers to make sure that nobody would have any sympathy or empathy for the people that were starving to death in the city of Glasgow.
I saw a lot of videos showing, like, that we all heard the 6 million Jews, 6 million Jews, and I saw loads of guys showing newspaper articles way before the war mentioning 6 million Jews, 6 million Jews, 6 million Jews. And just a couple of weeks ago, some guy had actually, they had the statistics of the so-called people that had died, and it was like 500,000 or something like that. And what they're saying, someone else was saying the population of the Jewish people was so much, and it didn't drop by that much. And they said it can't be right. So it's strange because you're looking at newspaper articles, they're talking about loads of different things. That's constantly 6 million well before the war. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, it's impossible for us to know. But I just know from reading loads of history books and everything is doctored. And just curious, because I mean, sometimes we go on our own little things for actually understanding stuff. Did you ever see any of that or hear any of that?
Oh, most definitely. And all you got to do is to look, now about what's going on now. Has all been, like, kind of like planned and created and been going on for a long time before that war. So the Second World War, I'm talking about specifically there, but they were mentioning that figure as well in the First World War, right? But they didn't have the actual power that, like, over the actual media, the I call them the lamestream media that they have now. Whereas, like, they just got to click one button and everybody says the identical same thing, right? Across every TV station in the planet, but or at least the Western world anyway. But they didn't have that power then, so it didn't take off the way that it did after the Second World War. Now, I'm not saying that like, people weren't killed because that was the whole idea. They wanted rid of them. But, that none of that makes sense. And I was watching this little clip from it was a guy I just can't stand the disgusting like excuse for it for a life that's like Piers Morgan
Yeah,
and like him and
agreed.
some
Yeah,
woman.
he's
Oh, it's filth. And he was interviewing this Holocaust survivor from a concentration camp. I can't remember which one. It might have even been Auschwitz. And she goes, yeah, but these films that they keep showing you, and these, even the documentary films, says none of it's real. None of it makes sense. And then we're like, oh, what do you mean? What do you mean? So, well, we'd already gone. And they made us go back and get into the camps. And then they came and took the films and the photographs. She says, and if you look there, right, I can't remember which one. On the photographs, I'm sure she said they had snow everywhere. It wasn't. There was no snow anywhere. And then it was like that idiot. Like he was like, oh well, yeah, and he made it so he says, so you just think that they should have done it a little bit more accurately, tried to direct the conversation. It was completely and utterly false, is what it was, mate. It's a fake thing that they actually done to create this thing. I'm not saying people didn't get killed, of course they did. I'm not saying that like horrendous things didn't happen, of course they did. Right? We know that they did. That's so horrendous things have been happening ever since then as well. Usually, like started and constructed by the actual British government, and there's never like this, the end of the war. When did it end? Like, I mean, when did it stop? Like, it's like even my own like dad. He was in the war, right? And it was like in Korea, right? So like it just continued in different places, and they just kept going after all of these other countries, right? And kept it going all the time. So has the United States. There's never ever been peace at any time, not since or before the Second World War. So all them saying, and oh, let's do this Remembrance Sunday, that's a pile of bollocks, right? Well, like. And again, going back to the island, and it's like a lot of like the sports people, even in Ireland, they say, well, I'm not wearing a poppy. Like, not what you've done to my country and my family. I'm not wearing, I'm going to watch. You want me to support the British Army that went and murdered my grandparents? You can go and do one. Like, and then, but all of the English, like, sports fans go, oh, that's terrible. You're not wearing a pot. You don't know anything about what England has done, right, to other countries around the world, including the ones closest to them, like Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. And a lot of people say, well, yeah, but Ireland's part of the UK. Since when? Like, I mean, you don't even know your own country, right? So what? Ireland's part? Like, when? Draw a picture for me then. Like, and when did that actually happen? Yeah, they haven't got a clue. They don't know anything about what's going on. And again, you got to be careful what you say, but they'll mention certain groups as, oh yeah, they're terrorists. Why? Because they went and bombed like a pub, or like they shot like some British soldiers. Do you know how many people that they like school children that then British soldiers murdered when they were walking to school, right? Because they were in the wrong part of the town and because they were the British. Honestly, it's like let's go and wear a poppy, wear it for peace, and we'll remember it. All it is, if you look at it, and I know what a lot of people say, well, my grandparents died or whatever, so I'm honoring them, and I get that, right? But you should be doing it privately then, because they were murdered just the same as everyone else was murdered by the governments. It's a blood festival. Why is it all flowing a great big red trail like that going into the river? Right? You're just showing that they're showing you a flow of blood. It's a blood sacrifice. That's what the whole thing was for. It was a Babylonian sacrifice. And what you're doing by celebrating this blood red poppy, right, is by still celebrating a blood festival. That's all it is. It's a pagan festival, a satanic festival of Babylon. But
And like a lot of people, they think that, like the black people were the first slaves. It was actually the Irish were sold to the black people, so they were selling them in Jamaica and a few other countries. And you'd even see some of them they have Irish accents even though they're black, because obviously they just generations and generations. But they killed. millions of them. And the famine, that was all a lie as well. Chris Fogarty wrote a book on that. And it's basically they sent in half the military. And if you were my brother and they torched your roof and kicked you out, if I took you in, they'd do the same to me, like. And they took send all the food. They make it look like the Irish were tick paddies, that basically we lived on a potato and it got a potato blight and we're surrounded by the sea. And it was like, and yeah, we hadn't the brains to fish, like in fairness. And the other thing is, there was supposed to be loads of forests and everything, and they just cut that down as well. Like, so there was supposed to be beautiful forestry in Ireland, all cut down by the British. So, like, most people don't know that. They just believe, oh, famine, and that's why the population kind of is what it is. But it's like you have to take so many layers out to try to find the truth. And then when you tell the truth, you get censored and they take you off because it's like you're a nut job. And yet you can see people posting, murders, rape, anything. There's no problem with that. But when you show the truth, oh, you're kind of opening a can of worms here. We better keep that one closed.
Yeah, exactly. When you look the and see what they did, that they when they went in, they were taking all of the good agricultural land from the actual Irish people and putting English lords there, and then, like, say, burning all the homes to get rid of them, and then taking all of the food that was all produced in Ireland and taking it back to England again, then leaving the people with no food or shelter or anything, and then offering them soup money, right? So I don't know if that's like a term you've heard before, but they would go with the food, but they called it soup money because a lot of it was bread and soup. And they would say, well, okay, so you've been living in Ireland all this time, your whole family's there, but what you got to do now is you've got to convert to the Protestantism, which is the English religion. And if you do that, we'll give you food. And if you don't, then we're starving you to death. And that was it. And doing it in front of them, if you change to our English Protestantism, then you can have, like, the food, and we'll feed you, because we've stolen all the food anyway. We're just talking about the farmers here. Something similar going on in it, right? So now they're just spreading it to, like, it's all going back to the city of London again, isn't it? But it's yeah, I mean,
And
it's
like you
crazy.
mentioned pagan festival. Is Halloween another pagan festival?
Oh, 100% satanic,
Okay,
isn't it?
so this is one that I only found out this week. I'm not sure if you've heard this one. Because I'm like, I know we're kind of big on blockchain technology, crypto. We've talked a lot about that, but I just said there's something up. There's something up. I just getting a bad vibe on it. The white paper was released on Halloween. And I mean, of all the times you could release the Bitcoin white paper, it was released in 2008 on Halloween. And
Wow.
yeah, exactly. So that's even, that I was kind of going, ooh, that's an interesting one. So it's just
Yeah.
it's just buyer beware, like.
Yeah, no, that is weird, because that's the whole thing, is, and it's like the Halloween is just you're celebrating a satanic festival again, and people just join in, think it's great, which is the same thing for which, like Christmas as well, with it being so huge. I mean, the whole thing is a complete fantasy farce that was created by Coca-Cola, right? It's like, and all they did was, I can't remember the date, what it was. It was because Coca-Cola didn't used to sell much drinks in the winter, because it was always seen as, like, well, summer, like, have a drink, it's cool, cooling you down, because, like, the hot weather, blah, 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 in the United States, right? So in the winter, it's all too cold. Nobody really wants to drink. How can we do that then? So they invented the guy with the red suit and the big beard. That's all invented by Coca-Cola. And obviously everything else is invented, like the tooth fairy and stuff like that, but Coca-Cola company, that corporation, invented that. And it changed the religion, the way that people look at religion for Christmas and everything like that, because obviously with the Catholic religion, or maybe Christian, but definitely Catholic, their big celebration was Easter. Oh, let's celebrate somebody getting crucified. Yay! You know, and but when they supposedly, and it was nothing to do with getting born. That was all come later on. It's like, you know, absolute nonsense. But Coca-Cola invented the red suit, the boots, the chimney, all of that, like it's just another, like, fake festival complete. But what it truly is, on Saturnalia, is what it really is, which is a satanic festival, like for the god of Saturn, where they would actually sacrifice all the babies that were actually made in Easter. You know, the actual birthing festival of the rebirth of the new year, so everybody could and they had big sex orgies, and then the babies would be born, you know, around the Christmas time for Saturnalia, where they would sacrifice them.
So, so the event, because there's a few different things I'd like to touch, but just make sure we cover your event. That's going to be on the 15th of December. I believe it's an online one that people can.
It is, yeah. I mean, what we done, we did like a small like online event. I just did it last week. I only did a couple of days, just 2 days before I thought I'm going to open up our private meeting. So do a private meeting every Thursday on our private group. I thought, well, I'm going to open it up to everyone else, and I'm going to specifically talk about GDPR, on how to use it against debt collectors, because you know that again be tied in with the central banking system. So it's all a complete scam, the whole thing. But you know, I was going to show them how to use GDPR against the debt collectors specifically, and using this N1 filing, which is a court filing. Okay, it's a UK one. But you know, you can do that, or their version of which the other countries, exactly the same for Ireland, just a slightly different name. And then from there, I mean, I've actually wrote over the last year a GDPR handbook, and it is huge. Every time that I was going into it and looking at GDPR, and my original thoughts were, right, let's look at debt. So I went over on the debt side because we know that they breach the data all the time, because we know that there is no real debt. Therefore, they can't buy the debt, and any debt that is, I mean, I've checked the other countries. Australia's the same. United States is the same. Property, it's property. And in all of these different countries, when they're selling or signing or transferring property, it has to be done through a deed. Now, like a debt is classed as property. It's an intangible asset. And it's in all the insolvencies laws. If your company is going bust, but you're owed money from another company or another person, whatever it would be, that's classed as an asset, even though it's a debt, because it's property. Right? And there's many other like acts and statutes that show that that debt is classed as property. So if you are transferring it under the Law of Property Act 1925 in the UK, section 136, it has to be transferred through a deed of assignment. Now, you have to give the debtor a notice of assignment. However, assignment is the actual key word. So for there to be an assignment, there has to be something to assign. And the only thing that you can assign is a deed. So if you're buying a house, you get property deeds for your house. If you're buying a debt, you have to transfer it through the deed. And it has to be a legally executed deed. You can't just like not have one. I mean, how many people do you say, I'm just going to take that house? I want it, so I'll take it and I'll pretend I bought it. That's literally what the debt collectors do. They
Like the
pretend they
government,
bought it. Hey?
like the government do to all of us.
Well, yeah, well, they take whatever they want, don't they? You know, but yeah, apart from them, you know. But so that's what we did. We did that. It was only 2 hours long, and I did it there. But what I'm going to do on the 15th, I'm launching this it's going to be an all day, or it's a Sunday the 15th of December. It's going to be all day webinar, and it's just going to be all about GDPR, and it's going to go really deep into it though. So I'll really show how to start the process, how it works, all of the mechanics and why, but how you can use GDPR to actually expose the debt collectors for what they're doing, stop them, and get compensation. I mean, this is the thing. They are breaching your data, so you can be the one that takes them to court, not the opposite way around. But it doesn't just work on that, right? I'm not teaching people to not pay council tax. I'm not teaching people to do anything like that. But if you're in a position where you've got a debt collector who's coming to you saying you have to pay me the council tax arrears, then they are breaching your data as well. Not only that, but they have not got the authority to actually collect on behalf of there. So there is no what we call legitimate interest. And if they haven't got a legitimate interest, then they are being unlawful. We have the case law to prove that they're being unlawful as well, because there is no legally executed liability order in this country, right, for council tax. They removed it and they have no process for it. It's like literally a bulk clearance center, so there is no legally executed court order. And they've proven it in a high court, with Judge Harrison, and that's now case law. So you can use GDPR against the councils there, but you can also use GDPR against these private parking companies because they abuse your data and breach data law all the time because they're getting away with it for so long. But also you can use it against the supermarkets that are taking your data every time you walk in. You could like shut them all down
Yeah,
so
we
easily.
actually went into detail on both the car parks and thing, how if everybody came together,
Yeah.
yeah.
And why won't people come together? Why, you know what I mean? It's like, I tell people all the time, but it's like, oh, wouldn't that be a great idea? Oh, wouldn't that be a great idea? Well, you got to do something about it. There's so many groups all around the country, isn't there? And, all you ever see is them arguing with each other instead of like uniting and doing one thing, one thing.
I tried it. I tried to do stopping the chemtrails. I had so many people, and I said, look, if we just bring in three people each and you just do the ripple effect of that, you've plenty. And as soon as I was putting it together, they all just ran for the hills. And I'm like, I'm left, I'm not going to do this on my own because it's simple to take me out. You need to have at least 100 people, and then they'll take notice. And if you walk down the main street outside the mayor's office, then your thousands are actually seeing that.
Mhm.
But people will just talk and whinge and moan, but they'll do nothing. And unfortunately, you're better off not doing it on your own because it's like they just take you. People will not come to help you. Like, so why would you risk yourself? You have to have numbers to do
Yeah.
anything.
But like we said about the either the supermarkets and the car parks, right? Like we've got two or three, like in my private group, who I mean, in their own town, and they're doing what I've said. And it's great. It's fantastic, but the effect won't be there because what you need literally hundreds upon hundreds in all of these groups to do it at the same time because then they can't cope, right? One or two that can get through. Right. I mean, I'm not saying that the supermarkets shouldn't have your data. What I'm saying is they have to follow GDPR protocols. So they have to supply you with what data they've collected on you. That's the point. So if 10,000 people went and asked for it at the same time, the system would collapse, right? Just like what they did with DEFRA when they had to go and register all the chickens. So people were ringing up DEFRA and going online in DEFRA and registering the pet chicken or the chicken nugget or the freezer, like the dead chicken in the freezer, and the system collapsed. So then they couldn't do anything with any of the chickens, and the ridiculous thing of people having their own eggs, which is, oh, a source of food, right? So, and that's the whole thing. It's got to be the numbers that do it. So if we had thousands all putting in an SAR requesting the data from the same supermarket at the same time, right? They wouldn't be able to do it. They wouldn't. So then they'd be paying thousands and thousands in compensation for missing the deadline. Because as soon as you got that past that deadline, that's a breach. That's compensation. If they point blank refuse, say, no, I'm not doing it, that's a breach. You get compensation. So you're talking about £5,000 compensation each time. There's like, 1,000 of you doing it. It's a lot of money, right? So then you're doing it. They can't cope with the administration of doing that. That's what collapses the system. Then they're going to get rid of them stupid cameras that you're walking in there. Then they're going to get rid of them stupid tills with your face on it when you're trying to like do, well, you're working for the supermarket, aren't you? Because you're scanning your own goods. There's no till people anymore. You know what I mean? It's that's how you would have the effect. But no, people
And can we
prefer to
do that
moan.
on? Because like I saw it in Poland and just massive amount of cameras everywhere, and you would think, okay, if I'm robbed or something, this is going to help me. That they find the criminal, but they go, oh, we don't have access to that or whatever. They're gathering all your information, and once you become, it's like looking at the chemtrails. Once you see it, you see it everywhere. They are everywhere, and it's like they're just constantly gathering your. It looks like the Chinese system that they're trying to implement, but like it's the same thing. I mean, you could say, "Hey, why are you gathering my information?" And if people actually requested that, because if you take my face without my permission and you're constantly doing it.
But there has to be what's called a legitimate interest as well. So, whenever you speak to anybody and say, for instance, a supermarket or a shopping center, it's all for security. No, it's not. And you don't know what's happening to the data yourself because you're just working for the corporation. So we've even got case law, and this is in my book, right? This is why I want to bring it out. And this is why we're going to go big on how I'm actually going to probably split the book because it is too big. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. There's I think 50 chapters in this. Every single chapter is a different scenario on how you can actually beat the corporation at their own game using what they invented, GDPR. But they invented it to protect themselves. They didn't realize that we could read. What, you can read? I didn't think you used to get a bath. It's like, but even on I've got case law that will show you that they're not allowed to use facial recognition in the police vans. So you see them all over the place and they'll stop it and they'll put a sign up saying, we're using facial recognition. That doesn't excuse them, right? You need unambiguous consent anyway, and there's no unambiguous consent. And what it means unambiguous, well, tell me exactly what you're doing with it and why you're doing that. They can't tell you that. So, and the people that I'm talking about, the grunts in the van, they don't know. They don't know anything, right? They get their 30 pieces of silver and they'll do exactly what they're told. So we got it against the Chief of Police of Wales, and they sued him for using facial recognition in the street, and he didn't have the legitimate interest to do so. And once you've got that in case law, that's from the High Court, all right, then you can use that in your own case and go against them. And you can shut it all down if people will work together. Because one or two people doing it, yeah, they're going to get annoyed at you, but it's just like the odd mosquito or the odd, wasp sting, yeah, or bee sting, it's going to hurt, right? But if there's 1,000 bees attacked you, you're dead. So, and we've got to look at it the same way. Yeah, we can do it. And yeah, I'm going to, someone will use that, like the guys that I've got in my group, and they're getting their compensation off the supermarkets. But the supermarkets are like, oh, this little mosquito will flick them away with like £5,000. But if there was 1,000 people that did it at the same time, they'd be like, we have to change our policy. That's all we're trying to do. Change the policy so that it's better for man instead of better for the corporations. To me, that just makes sense.
Yeah. Just going back to the foraging, because there's wild boars here, and I see deer and everything, but they don't really want people eating it. They're going, oh, it has to be tested and everything, which, I mean, they're eating off the land, so they're a lot healthier. And, that's one thing stopping it. But there was one person, I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but there was a person I know, and I was talking about the chemtrails, and as always, thought I was batshit crazy. And they're living out in the wilderness or whatever, and it's because of the amount of foxes, they were advised they were going spraying to kill the foxes, but don't worry, it's not going, but just keep your animals in for the day. And it's like, yeah. So they've admitted they're spraying stuff to kill the foxes. What's the knock-on effect for even your dog going away and killing a fox or whatever it is, or the birds that are in that area, all the other wildlife? It's like they're admitting this is in Łódź in Poland that they're doing that. So, how many things is like that we don't even know about? I mean, we know we talked about the trail, but that's one that that's confirmed.
Well, I tell you what, right? We were just talking before, we went live, unfortunately I just lost my little dog and my little girlie. It was, and it was 13 years we had her literally to the day. Honestly, I found her in a box, just abandoned in a car park in Spain, with 3 little baby puppies that she'd had. But anyway, when we're talking about well, I don't want to let anyone take her away. I'm not going to let anyone take her and cremate her. I'm going to bury her myself. So, and I thought, well, I'm going to have a little check, because a couple of people that says, oh, well, what you want to do is you want to, put them all in lime because that helps decompose the body. And I'm like, lime? I'm sure that preserves the body. So, I went online and I Googled it. And yeah, it does. It preserves the body. So if you're burying, just don't go burying people. Right. But I mean, you actually see it on the films. Let's get the lime, and I think it's like Gangs in New York. No, not Gangs in New York. Goodfellas, that Henry Hill movie. It's like, where's the lime? We're going to bury them. But like that actually preserves the body and stops it going off, by the way. So don't put lime in if you ever have to bury any pets, right? So I thought, well, I'm not doing that. And then I was reading it, and it was these people in the say natural burial, like put it in wood chip, and it's got to be a certain level down so it stops the earthworms. Earthworms only being, I didn't know this, are in the only either 12 to 18 inches of the topsoil. They don't go all the way down, right?
I didn't know that
So,
either.
well, why would you? It's like, but I didn't know that. So you got to be below that level because you don't want the earthworms eating the dog that's been euthanized because it's poisonous. You've euthanized it. You filled it with poison, really. It is a toxin, no matter which way you want to put it. Might put them out of their pain. It might help them, but, they go to sleep. But it's still a toxin that's inside of them. So if something eats them, they're poisoned, they die. So if you imagine, just think of that. So I mean, my legs are still sore now, and I dig a massive big hole. But if they had done that to kill the foxes, then that's a toxin that's killed the foxes. So the foxes would be collapsing, we're going to be get eaten by everything, carrion crows, probably like anything that would be like, what do you call it, like foraging or any other animals that would eat flesh, but there will be thousands and thousands of other things would be eating that toxin and they would also die. So to say it won't affect your animals, but hide them anyway, that doesn't make
And
sense.
like
It
as you
just shows
say,
how
the crows,
stupid
the
it is.
birds, and then your cat at home eats that crow, which has been, and that's going into them. Like so, yeah, it's
Yeah,
strange.
it's crazy. So, if they go kill something like that, which I mean, even around here, you see like they use all of these what do you call it, the pesticides, and it stops or it keeps the pavements nice and clear. Right. Well, the dogs and us are walking on the pavements and you're spraying them. And you see the people in the council spraying them and they've got hazmat suits on and masks and they're walking around the streets spraying the pavements. Well, if they have to wear that, should we not be wearing it when we're walking out after they've just sprayed it? I mean, and well, it keeps all of the weeds away, right? Well, I don't want the weeds away. I'm quite happy with the weeds, but like the dogs are going and they're sniffing on the wall and they're having a wee and that's why they're always ill as well, because they're sniffing up really close with their noses up into all of these toxic chemicals that the councils are spraying all the time. In Spain, when we used to live in Spain, they would go along the street and spray it out the back of the vans. So they're spraying it, and you've seen all the people walking down the streets, and they're all spraying it out all over them. And so it's just what did they say? It was like disinfectant.
My friend was in India not so long ago, and she said they came on the plane before they disembarked and just sprayed constantly. They had a few cylinders for the mosquitoes or whatever. And I was like, I'd fucking freak out if they'd done that, like if I was there. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a guy he's where we used to live in Spain, Mijas, well, near where we used to live, and Janine like watches him. He's he does crystals and stuff like that anyway. And he was going to Bali, I think he was going to. And he'd been told this by somebody in the airline what they do. And they go out and they spray the plane before you get off, right? So he had this gas mask. So they pulled up and everything, and he put this gas mask. So you see all these people looking at him, freaking out. And then they come in and sprayed the entire cockpit, right, with everybody in it, with whatever it is, you don't know. They don't even tell you. And it will be highly toxic. And then you go off and you think, oh, I've got a cold, oh, I've got a sore throat. No, you haven't, right? You're actually, now your body's detoxing for what they've pumped into you, and you have to get rid of it somehow. So it feels what they call, which a cold, by the way, doesn't exist, right? That is your body detoxing, and it needs to do that, right? But like, yeah. So he put a gas mask on because he'd been told by the airline or somebody in the airline what they do to make sure you're ready for that. Luckily for him. So no one else in the plane had that though. You know, they were all looking at him like he was mad, and then they're all choking and coughing and spluttering. He's sitting there, big smile on his face, and a gas mask on. It's
Uh,
mad, isn't it?
I mean, when I heard that, I said, yeah, I'll never want to go there. With Trump, because the last time, like Trump's now after getting elected, and there's a lot of craziness. But there was one thing that I saw, and I'm like disgusted, really. You see, Trump, they were after going to the UFC fight. He was like next to Musk and JFK and everything. And then they're on the plane. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was AI. And they're all eating McDonald's. And it's like you're promoting toxic shit. And like the amount of people that follow Trump and follow Musk and think that this JFK is going to be the best thing since sliced bread to help your health. And they're sitting around eating toxic food. What a disgrace for the four of them. You know, the son, Trump's son was the other guy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't rate any of them at all. It was like, it does my head in. It was like I had just done a post actually on TikTok. We were talking about that before, like, content, and I had said, if you've got like a debt problem, we can help you. We'll solve it. We'll put you in the right place. We'll give you the information. Blah blah blah. And someone had put up a little post saying, "Okay, great. What's the solution?" And then someone had put underneath them answered it, Trump. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So I mean, all right. So Trump's going to solve your debt problems. Going to pay your debts, is he? I mean, like there's still people that are still putting out this BS that he is going to be the king of the world and he's going to like ride over the horizon, like wearing a white hat and riding a white stallion to save the world. There's nobody coming to save anybody. You want to help yourself. It's all within you, and the only one that's going to help you and save you is you. But yeah, I mean, they are obviously a massive influence, and to show them eating that kind of crap, crap
And his
Donald's, I mean,
daughter as
it's
well. I mean, he
disgusting.
he admitted on a few shows that he got jabbed. I mean, at the start he was saying he took natural stuff, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm on my third booster or whatever." And also, his daughter done a photo shoot when they were pushing the jab. So, are they the people that have your back when they're doing that? Because I mean, if I'm able to go away and research this and see, okay, there was so many PCR tests going back and forth, and it was a whole farce, and very fast I was able to kind of see that. Are you saying they can't? They don't know that? They don't have people in their corner? So if they're out there pushing that, you know that they're not on our side,
No,
100%.
absolutely not on our side whatsoever. And they're all part of the same agenda. They're all part of the same group, right? They're all cheering on like the Zionists. So, that they blame everybody else for all the problems, and it's all a different group that they class as a terrorist group, but like they're not, so they can go and kill anybody that they want and say anything that they want. But as long as like no one else is allowed to stick up for themselves, defend themselves, and it's they're definitely not a positive force in this world, and they're not going to help anybody that won't make them money.
No, definitely. So I hear people saying it, and I know you have it in one of your documents that you gracefully give free on the thing, like unalienable rights. And you hear different people, oh, you're my unalienable rights, and lots of people are hearing about that. You might explain exactly what is that?
Well, you 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 shouldn't have to ask permission for anything that you need to do in life. You have Because you're here, then you have a right to life. You don't need permission for anybody to be alive. So the same thing, you shouldn't ask permission for to be like doing anything, traveling or like having a house anywhere. It's your right. Think about it. An actual basic right of life would be to like food and drink. So you're going to need water and you're going to need food. But now they're controlling it, so you have to actually ask permission or at least pay a fortune for it. Like, I mean, water, where does that come from? It comes from above. So it's provided by the creator. But now they've done it and they won't. And to say, oh, well, no, we have to look after it. And I mean, they're putting all the toxins and poisons into it and everything. So our inalienable right is to be able to live. We shouldn't ask permission to be able to live. We have a right to life. But we need water. Without water, we have no life. I mean, we're about like people say 70%, we're about 90% water is the body. So it's like we need water to actually just be alive. but they won't even allow you now to go and get a bucket and collect rainwater. So I'm not allowed to do that. Well, why? I mean, I'd be better off drinking this than drinking out of that tap, because drinking out of that tap is just going to give me like dementia. It's just like what you're actually putting in it, the all of the fluoride going into it and all the toxins going into it. I'd be better off like just standing there with my mouth open collecting water out there when it's pouring down the rain. So, but inalienable rights, basically, it's like your right to exist and your right to live. You should all have the right to shelter. They shouldn't say, well, if you can't live, you either live in that little shack, right? Or you're not allowed to go anywhere. But that's basically what it is. That was the land clearances, very similar to what they've done to the Scottish, like driving them out the Highlands because they wanted them all gone so that they could just do whatever they wanted with the land, right? The same as they did with Ireland. And it was just like your right to live is, but your shelter will be in that shack, in that horrible city, or you die outside, and that's it. So, but your inalienable rights basically is like your essence that's given from the creator to actually be alive. So you shouldn't have to ask permission from it. I'm not talking about these made up ones like, oh, my human right is because like, somebody
My
said,
constitutional rights. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Oh, my right to free speech, and all that. So, but that's just man-made, you know. So yeah, I'm not saying you haven't got that right, but it's like a right that you've been granted by a man. you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know
So,
about the free speech one. I think everyone should be allowed to, as long as you're
okay.
not like purposely attacking somebody for no reason whatsoever, that you should be allowed to say anything reasonable to
So
yourself.
on that actually, because I seen like t Tommy Robinson. So I'm not sure how it felt, but it looked like he was getting arrested the last I saw. But irrespective of him, I'm seeing a few different things in the UK. Some guy put a post up, got 2 years. Some other guy, 3 years. Some guy, 20 people rape a girl, 180 hours community service. A guy rapes another 15-year-old community service. I mean, it's batshit crazy, like seeing that. Like, but do you know much what's happening with Tommy Robinson, or what's your thoughts on him, or is he what's going on there?
Don't really follow him. I don't know. I mean, obviously, you can't help but know little bits of what's going on. I know he's been put in prison, but I'm not really sure. I think it was something about because he'd actually put up some kind of film, and he was the court had said don't do it, so it was a contempt of court. That could be wrong. I'm not really sure. Um, but apparently he's been put in prison for that. But on the free speech side, I mean, I know it's not just that, all of this craziness that's going on right now about like, the Southport murders as well. I don't know much about it. I've never really been involved in any of the research about what's going on, but there was they had all of the protests that they called rioters. They weren't rioters. The guy that was actually shouting at police and he had a placard. I wish I'd wrote his name down, and he actually committed suicide. He got put in prison. He'd never had done a thing wrong, and so he's hung himself in prison. I mean, a complete tragedy, and that's a crime by Stormageddon himself. That's murder by him, and
It could have been an Epstein kind of hanging as well. Like, you don't know, because do we trust him? They could have taken him out.
oh,
You wouldn't know.
oh yeah, yeah, but the guy was just simply just it was a Joe Public, is what he was. He wasn't an activist. He wasn't involved in anything. He definitely wasn't a far right rioter. He was just a guy, a working guy, never been in trouble in his life, and they put him in prison for like shouting at the police, who and the police. Well, anyway, we'll not go on about them, but they instigated everything, and then they were giving them like 3 year sentences and just for what. But then when you've got like people working for the BBC get caught with hundreds of indecent images of little children on the phone or on the computer, it's like, naughty boy, don't you do that again. Right, and off you go. You're fine. Don't worry about it. But, make sure, please tell me you won't do it again. We'll let you off. But like shout at the police, wave a placard or like fall over a wheelie bin, because you've had a little bit too much to drink while you're pretending to be at a protest, you're getting 3 years in prison.
And I mean that, like with Ireland, they brought in the hate bill, and they can determine then what you write is like hate. And I mean, it's weird. Like so that they're basically just determining whatever you write. If we want to take you out, we can. We just decide. Okay, yeah, that's a hate speech. That's what you've just said, what you've written, and it was signed in by the president as well. Like, and it's pathetic. And actually, because there's elections in Ireland coming up, and everybody is just against every political party that's there because they're all scum. They've all been caught out. They've all lied. They've all pretended as always. So there's a load of independents now that are coming out and trying to come together. But it's a strange situation because you never see that. Like in the UK, it's like the Tories, Labour. In Ireland, it was always Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, but they've come together, and then it was the Greens. But now it's like you had Sinn Féin and you had the other ones, and they've shown their true colours. So like there's never been a time that people kind of go, I don't want to vote for any of them. And now it's
Mhm.
just a load of independents. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen in Ireland, but it's a sad state of affairs that I mean, I don't vote as you know, I'm like yourself, I don't believe in giving my power over to somebody, but you would hope you have like at least some kind of decent group of people that are holding them accountable or just calling it out, which in turn lets the public know what's going on, and then they put some pressure, and sometimes things stop because of that. But it's like when they're all in the same boat, like we're in trouble.
Yeah, well, what's the point of voting either left or right of the same pair of shoes? I mean, they're going in the same direction on the same body. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's pointless. You should like be more like that movie from years ago, Bruce Does Millions, and vote for none of the above. I don't know if you've seen that one. A guy was like Richard Pryor, and he was trying to get rid of money because he'd inherited money. So it was like, he ran a campaign to be what do you call it, a mayor of a city, I think it was. But by voting none of the above, and that's all you had to vote for. And the none of the above won the actual election. So, that would be an interesting thing. But to have all the independence, then I mean, you can see. I think what is the because of the people in Ireland and the passion in Ireland and everything that they've went through in Ireland, they have got more chance of winning freedom than anywhere else. Like in that part of the world anyway, which is why that they're so aligned, like with the likes of the Middle East because of the oppression that's happening there. It's just the same. They're getting driven out of their own country. They're getting murdered. They're getting starved, out of their own country, which is exactly what England did to Ireland, for hundreds of years, not just like, that last hundred when the sort of like talk about it in the 1916 rising went on for a long time before that as well. Um, but but I think that they have got it in them, to actually survive that and say, well, no, we are better than you, and we are Irish, and we will get pushed through this, so we will win. And for it to go in more and more and more independence, you could see, I mean, I don't believe in voting. If it made a difference, they wouldn't let you do it, right?
Exactly.
If it made a difference, they wouldn't let you do it. So it's already decided. So that's the only thing. I mean, I would love to see like loads of independence like that, and then them, in Ireland, and then them get together, right, to overthrow like the political parties, because that's just pathetic to have a political party that and you have to be in that political party, and that's why they call them the whips, because they used to whip them to make sure that they actually voted the correct way that they wanted. It's nuts. Oh,
And
take the whip from you. I'll shove this whip up your ass.
and
Like,
if you look, like, there's people now in their 40s, they're living at home or they can't get a place. And when all the evictions happened, we were thrown on the street, and it was like, then Ukraine, oh, no problem. And now all the asylums, all the hotels are set aside and everything. But what they did with all the properties, when you had the big bailout, I mean, that was kind of known around the world. It was called the pigs, that it was like, Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. It was like in Ireland, sorry. And basically nobody got anything. It was like they bailed out the bondholders, which Gates would have been a bondholder and all this. But like BlackRock don't pay any taxes on this. So they're coming in buying all these properties at pennies on the dollar. and then they're doubling and tripling the rent. So properties that would have been like €800 are now 2,400, 2,500. Which nobody can afford. Like you have to basically then have like three or four people living as couples in rooms, which before they'd be just a pair would be in one house.
Hmm.
And there's loads of different organizations. And now the politicians, they're getting all these fees for all these asylum buildings or their own accommodation because it's based on beds. And they're getting caught because it's actually you have to declare different things. And it is such a sad state of affairs. So that's why I agree with you. I think the Irish, they've just had so much, they've been just pushed down, and it's like eventually, like, yeah, you give up or you just win because you never give up. And I think the Irish have that kind of fighting attitude, and that's why even with the English, eventually, like they got the freedom, even though you're still fucking taking a quarter of our land. You've got one room of our four-bedroomed house, like, I don't know
Yeah.
why the fuck you won't get out, like, but it's like I think we're at a tipping point and I'm hoping something will happen. And I mean, as you say, like elections can be, we know that they can manipulate them and everything, but we're living in strange times, like.
Very strange times, you know. I mean, and people say, like, is this the turning point to like? I think people hate it. I'm gonna so this must be we're gonna move into the golden age. Like, I don't know really what that means, but I do think that there's going to be some major changes that are going to happen, like, very, very soon. I'm not saying it's going to be good. We don't know, but it's getting to a boiling point, isn't it? It's getting to a point where it's going past and it's actually pushed past the ridiculous for, some of the stuff that's happening. And you can only push so far. Same thing as, you know what I mean? A balloon, you can only blow it up so far before it blows up in your face.
And I mean, we've seen recently the lady in New Zealand doing the haka in the parliament, which was actually brilliant because they were pushing a bill and she was standing up and she had a few people obviously doing the same thing. But you could see, I don't know, is it like the chair? I forget the name that they call the guy that's actually the chair that kind of controls the meeting if you can talk. And like you've that in Ireland, and I think you've that in the UK as well. I find that very strange because basically it's like, say, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, whatever political party, they've got somebody that's actually chairing the whole meeting. So if I'm in opposition, you're how is that allowed? It should be an independent that has no affiliation with any party. So that
You
in
would think
itself,
so. It's the same. It's the same in England, though, isn't it? It's like that idiot, that Lindsay Hoyle, I think he's called, and he's like part of the Labour Party, and then he's I don't know what they call him, a speaker of the
yes,
House,
the
like,
Speaker of
and
the
the
House,
Speaker
that's
of
the
the
one.
House is like decides and he's actually just stood up in Parliament and said no one's allowed to mention Southport murders again. You're not allowed to say anything about terrorism. You're not allowed to ask any questions. Nobody, and that's it. And you'll go, oh, okay,
It's
hang on. You know, it's like so there's no debate. So then these people say, "Well, we represent you. We're coming to." No, you don't, right? Because like, all your constituents, they want to know what's going on. They want to know what's going on in the country. They want to know what this weird thing. Why isn't it that anyone will be allowed to mention it, and you get put in prison for actually doing a demonstration, which is supposed to be allowed to do, right? Because of these murders that happened to these little girls, but you try and say anything about it, you go to prison. But they've actually say in the Houses of Parliament, no one's allowed to ask a question. I mean, that's something big is getting hidden, and you can't hide, that many elephants in one room. It's gonna ping out somewhere, and there's something big will be happening soon. And like I say, I'm not saying it's going to be a good thing. I certainly, I'm interested to see what's happened, what's going to happen, but
is your
it's.
second layer in the House of Lords? Because in Ireland we've like the Seanad, and even I remember seeing that like it was like basically they appoint the people for the Seanad. So if they're passing a bill, then it goes to the Seanad. But it was the people that like I remember Mary O'Rourke. She was one terrible politician, didn't get re-elected, and then she gets a position in the Seanad, and you're going, the people have voted. We don't want you. And they're putting all their cronies in the things. So no matter what they do, it gets passed. Like eviction bill that they did to the Irish. Like, I mean, so I'm not sure what way it works in the UK, but if you even just look at that, like that should be an independent that's not politically affiliated because then you've got a non-biased, hey, they're trying to pass this bill. Does this serve the people of Ireland? But no, it's all their people that didn't get elected or were previous politicians who, got kicked out Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now you've got a second home there with a lovely wage and lovely pension and lovely expenses. It's a fucking joke. Like, and I'm just curious, is the UK the same kind of system or
Well, it's like the House of Lords, isn't it? So you got like David Cameron, he got put in the House of Lords. I mean, everybody he got he was useless at everything, right? So he had to leave because he was so useless, and then they go put him in the House of Lords. How is that then? And he's there as a conservative like lord. What does that mean? Like, but again, who are they? Because they know they're just keeping it in their little clique. You know, it's their little group of what elites, but they ain't elite, they're scum. Their little group of scum that'll run everybody else. The whole thing, which is like, everything's just it's back to front, isn't it? Which is again, they talking about like they showed dispatches from Channel 4, I think it was, but they were doing like a documentary on the royal family, but specifically like Charlie Boy, Sausage Fingers, and his son, and how many millions that they actually make just from like renting out like the land. Now you got to think like the NHS, which is supposed to be a trust, which is supposed to be paid for by the government, right? So he actually charges them millions for them to park their ambulances on his land. So, and then even the army, this is the crazy thing. Now, isn't it his army? So if it's his army, right, because he's the king, but then he charges the MOD millions for them to actually use his land. Now, why is it his land? Well, because a few hundred years ago, some other big thug, right, that had more soldiers than the other thug, went and killed all the rest of them. And that's the only reason. Their ancestors murdered more people than your ancestors, therefore they're the king. So they get to ride around in a golden carriage while we actually, can't, like, well, grannies and that can't pay for the heating. I mean, it's just like, it's mental. But that shows you again like the actual fakeness of this fiat currency and where does all this money come from? If he's actually taken all this money from the government, right, to pay for the army, but then they have to go. So where does the money come from? And none of it makes any sense. So it's just like it all goes to them. It all filters back to them so that they control all of the wealth and why they all own the land. Like, you know what I mean? You're not even allowed in your own house. You saw that, wow, I've bought my house. Have you? Well, why does it say that you're a tenant on the deeds then? A tenant is somebody who rents. So, and anyone don't believe me, go and have a look and see what it says on your land deeds for you owning your house. You are a tenant
or if they
on the
deem
land.
you do something bad, they can actually get your property, take your property off you and sell you. So
Mhm.
if it was your legitimate property and you done nothing wrong, I mean, obviously the trickery that they do, and they're doing that all the time. So I know with the land and everything, it's like you don't own it. It's like I remember it's the land registry in Ireland, and just figuring out it's all trickery. Everything is trickery, and you go, no way. Like, and it's like the further you go down these rabbit holes, you go, Jesus, it gets a million times worse. Like.
Yeah, no, it does. It just gets worse all the time. And you see it, and it's just like, but it's a fact. You don't, when they're saying you won't own anything and you'll be happy, it's already that way, right? It's the same with the cars. They're all owned, well, in the UK, they're all owned by the
Everywhere. It's all
DVLA.
like that. It's all like that. Yeah.
Yeah, or the
Yeah.
DMV, or
Yeah.
it's like, so
That's why
they
you
own the
have to
car.
register your car. Why must you register your car?
Hmm. Yeah,
It's all trickery. It's all
of
trickery.
course it is. So you
So,
own nothing. So you own nothing already. Don't worry about it.
so with a company, right? Because some people they have the company as opposed to the individual. And yeah, we'll just finish up on this one though, because I know we're going to have you back soon again, and I love. But I'm curious about this one. It's like because like me personally, I had a lot of companies in Poland, and the way it worked is you were like personally liable. Nobody had told me that, but I was personally liable. But I know that sometimes, even in the UK, Ireland, but different all around the world, sometimes it's like yeah, limited company has the liability, and that's it. But other times they're going after the individual. And sometimes people are setting up the company instead of just working as an individual because you can get the VAT back and you can't as an individual get the VAT back and there's different things. I mean, some people say, oh, I put it through because it's an expensive business expense as if they're just after saving money. It's still your money. But how can you protect yourself when you do form a company that they don't try to come after you? Because they do it a lot and they come after you for say, even if you've done nothing wrong, they whatever they deem to be. So is there ways of protecting yourself when you do create a company?
Yeah, the only way that I would see that you can protect like your assets, right? Because when they come after you, what they're trying to do is drain all your wealth, so they leave you with nothing. So don't own anything in the first place. So how could you do that? Well, I mean, if you do have even a company, that company should be going in a trust. So you don't own the shares, the trust owns the shares. You don't own the company, the trust owns the company. The same if it's like a house. You don't own the house, the trust owns the house. Therefore, when they try and attack you, what they attack is your legal fiction, your full capital name, your title. So it's like Fred Henry Smith in all capitals. That is what they attack. That is called the estate. They can only go after the estate because the estate's the fiction, because they have created this fictional world that you have to go into, the world of commerce. So that the only thing that they can take off you is if you accept it by being the commercial entity, the legal fiction, and putting everything in the name of the legal fiction. Like look at your passport, it's that full capital name. You can't write like that in English, doesn't make sense. On your driving license, full capitals again, right? On any company that you form, when you get your certificate through, it's all capitals. It's not English. You can't write in English like that. Go and have a look. You can get, I've got them here, the Styles Manual of Oxford, the Styles Manual of Chicago shows you how you're allowed to write for the English language. You can't write in full capitals at all. Okay. But you do when you're using a legal fiction to make it, turn it into a fictional character or a fictional person. That is what actually owns the assets. So if you create it in trust, and put all of the assets in the trust and it takes it out of the estate, so the estate does not hold it, then you can't pay inheritance tax, you can't get taxed on it, they can't take it from you if you owe a debt, and they can't go after it if they're going to sue you. Oh no, we're going to sue you now, like for you hit him in the car, or you've got you did something wrong in your company, and we're going to shut your company down and take your assets to cover the costs, right? Well, you can, but apart from, you'll have to just go over. And the only thing I own is that, because everything else is owned by a trust.
And when
That's
you're
the
doing
way to
that, like
do it.
say the company's buying all these different things, whether it's the car, the offices, the whole lot, you don't have to register the trust. You just create the trust, have the witnesses, so that when they do come after you, you just go, "This is a trust." Is
Yeah,
that correct? Yeah.
it is. It is, which is exactly how the actual Rockefeller family got theirs set up. Everything was all done in trust, which is why they're so wealthy as they are now, because they hid everything in a trust, if you want to call it hidden, but they protected it by not tying it to a name. You see? Whereas, like, you have the Vanderbilt family, who were one of the wealthiest families, even more wealthier than the Rockefeller family at the time when they were at the peak. Now they own nothing, right? Because they didn't put it in trust and it all got lost, etc. You got like, it's the same thing with, well, it is an unfortunate thing, but bloodline planning. So if you actually have a house in a trust, like say these people have got a castle or a stately home, it's in a trust. The trust owns it, but the son lives in it. If the son gets married and then the wife says, "Well, I'm divorcing it and I want half of the estate," right? When the divorce settlement, so they look at the estate and say, "But this guy doesn't own anything. It's all held in trust. He might live in that stately home with that £5 million home and all that land, and he's got all of his Rolls Royces, but he doesn't actually own them. They're all held in trust. The trust for the actual property itself, the property trust. So you can have half of his assets. Yes, certainly. He's got 20 quid in the bank.
No.
So, yeah, I mean, simplified, but that really is it, though.
Yeah. No. Brilliant. Brilliant. Listen, Peter, as always, thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I look forward to the next one. But you might let people know where they can find you about the event, and I know you've got the one in February as well, so you might let people just.
Yeah, I mean, if you go and look on if TikTok, follow me on TikTok, checkmate the Matrix. But also, if you want to subscribe to the mailing list, which is claimyourstrawman.com, and get on the mailing list, and then you can get all the other links. because we're going to do the all day webinar, which will cover all of the GDPR, the debt stuff, very, very in depth. Also on how to go after the parking companies and the supermarkets and how to protect yourself from them with GDPR. And that will be on the 15th of December. So go to checkmatethematrix.com just to get on the mailing list. There's a lot of free stuff on there as well. And then you'll get all the info for everything else.
No, perfect. I'll make sure I'll put all the links, but the audio, the video. Thank you very much, Peter. So that's all for the Awakening Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends, and comment on what we discussed. And Peter's coming back every month, which we thoroughly enjoy. So if you've questions yourself, go into my website and there's a form, and you can just send it to me, and I'll make a list and I can make sure that I cover them. Until next week, take care. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. As mentioned at the start, you can find my 6 podcasts on roycollin.com or scan the QR code if you're looking to start a podcast or do a podcasting tour. I help with that. Also, if you're looking for a virtual assistant, we also have that service. And you can help the show by visiting the store, supporting our sponsors, or making a donation. Until next week, take care.